Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to the Relocation Reporting Profile Data Entry Tool Training. I am Jarl Jonas with Acumen Solutions, a contractor working with the GSA on the implementation of the Relocation Reporting Profile. Before we begin the training, please take note that this is a new requirement for all agencies to report on relocation information, and the upcoming deadline is Thursday, November 30th by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll review a few more items before we get to the system about the requirements. Our roadmap for the training session, as seen on our agenda here, is to first go through our training purpose and make sure that you are familiar with how to locate the helpful materials. We'll then take a brief look at the application, talking briefly about the history, the user roles assigned to your account within the system, some key business rules that are helping dictate our use of the platform, along with the reporting period, and then we'll take a look at all of that information combined in a visual way at the reporting process overview diagram. We'll then discuss how to access the application and make sure you're familiar with where to go and how to log in. And then we'll begin with the demonstration of the Relocation Reporting Profile Tool. I'll talk more about the agenda of the demonstration as we get to that specific part of the training. Lastly, we'll end with the technical support information to ensure that you're familiar with who to contact in the case that you encounter issues with the new platform. We'll also make sure that you're familiar, again, with the resources available to you in addition to this training. So the purpose of this training is to make all users familiar with the Relocation Reporting Profile Tool in order to meet the requirements of entering in required information. Today we'll go through the data entry and completion process. Now, in addition to this training, as you can see here on the screen, a screenshot of the user guide is available now on the login page of the Travel Reporting Tool. You'll see the URL of the tool shortly in case you're not familiar. I've also provided a link here directly within the presentation so you can go ahead and access from here as well. So let's briefly talk about the new application. As you may be aware, the provisions of Public Law 115-34, otherwise known as the Modernizing Government Travel Act, requires the GSA administrator to report on transportation costs for total agency payments for travel and transportation of people, employee relocation, and analysis of the total costs of transportation service by type. Now, the Relocation Reporting Profile's goal is to collect useful relocation data from the agencies to better inform policymakers of federal relocation trends and patterns in order to evaluate and shape future policy. Each and every person is assigned an account on the new platform. That account is also then provisioned with a set of permissions. These sets of permissions we call user roles. For the Relocation Reporting Profile Tool, there is one main user role known as the Relocation Data Entry user role. These permissions allow users to go ahead and enter and confirm the required relocation reporting profile data. There is also an oversight role allocated in the platform, and this is more for the program managers at GSA who oversee the Relocation Reporting Profile program. Now, when we get into the system, you'll also see your agency listed. And some of you who are listening to the recording here may be familiar with some of the other travel reporting tools that are available, such as the Senior Federal and Premium Class. Now, for the Relocation Reporting Profile, all the information is aggregated at the top agency level. For instance, the Department of Agriculture. Okay, so when we get into the platform, there is only one level for each agency. So it is expected that each agency would go ahead and collect and aggregate the information on your own and then use the platform to go ahead and put in the final numbers. So here is a reminder, the key business rules, in essence the key data that is needed to be entered into the platform, is first the obligated relocation information for the previous fiscal year, and then the final relocation information for the fiscal year 2 years prior. As an example, we have entered into the fiscal year 2018. So I am now required to go ahead and enter in my obligated relocation information for 2017. As well, I'm required to go ahead and enter in my final relocation information for 2015. Now, customarily, the relocation reporting period will close 60 days after the end of the fiscal year. For example, for the fiscal year 2017, which just ended, the reporting period will close on November 30th, 2017. As such, all information will need to be entered and then confirmed within the platform. After November 30th, the reporting period will be locked and all users will not be able to enter any new values or edit any existing data. Now in the case, you should need to make updates to the system after the deadline is passed, please contact the help desk at help.relocation@gsa.gov. Now here we have a visual representation of the business rules and deadlines that we just discussed. So here at the top, beginning with October 1st through November 30th is a typical reporting period, and this is representative of each fiscal year. Okay, so there's no specific year attached to this because it's representing the general requirement. Now, this year is a little bit different since we launched the platform on November 1st, but come next year, you'll have from October 1st through November 30th to enter and confirm the relocation information. As a reminder, you can see that the reporting period, once closed, will be locked here with the lock icon. And looking at the users that are involved, so we see the oversight user here has the ability to go ahead and see all of the information that's being entered into the platform by the agency data entry users. And to update your information in the system and confirm is an easy two-step process. Your first step would be to come into the platform and enter in both your final and your obligated data. Again, your obligated data for the previous fiscal year and the final information for 2 fiscal years prior. Now, when we get into the platform, you'll see that there is the ability to update individual fields or multiple fields in the case that there are multiple team members who are operating with different information. You all can operate on the same form and save the information and be able to view that as well. Also, it is understood that there might not be any information to report for a certain fiscal year. However, it is still important to go ahead and update the system in order to remain compliant with the requirements. And as you'll see, we'll demonstrate how to go ahead and report your agency as having no data to enter. With no data to enter, your process would stop there, but when you do have information, you do need to go to the second step here and complete your entry. Again, that'll be for both your final and your obligated data, so they're considered 2 separate entries. As a note here, before we get into the system demonstration, all fields will need to be completed before your final submission, okay, before you go ahead and click complete within the platform. It could be the case that you don't have any values for certain fields that are required. In that case, 0s would be an acceptable value for you to enter. But just so you know, no fields can be left blank. Once again, if you don't have any information at all for any of the fields for a particular fiscal year, you would then use the no data to enter, which we'll show you shortly. So let's go ahead and review how to access the platform. And before we do, as a reminder, each and every user who needs to go ahead and enter in the relocation information for their agency has been provisioned an account on November 1st. Now, we did have some existing users who were sent an email from Christine Morala letting you know that your permission sets have been updated and how you can go ahead and begin to access the relocation area and enter in the required information. New users would have been sent an email from the platform itself with a link to follow in order to activate your account. Now, I believe that most everyone has been able to activate their account, but in the case that you have not yet activated your account, that link would have expired 48 hours after the email has been sent. If you are listening to the recording and you do not yet have an account or feel as if you cannot get in, please go ahead and contact the help.relocation at gsa.gov, and they'll be able to assist you with getting access to the platform. So once your account is active, you would then, on subsequent visits, come to travel.reporting.gov. And you see we have a screenshot here of the home page. Here on the top left are just some brief reminders of the system itself and its purpose. On the bottom here is the help desk contact emails for each of the applications that are a part of the overall travel reporting tool, and relocation is here on the bottom. And then the resource links area is where you're going to be able to find that user guide that I mentioned earlier, along with a recording of the training. Now here on the right is the login area, and you can see there are 3 different login methods for you to be able to access the platform. Here at the top is using OMB Max credentials. In the middle would be your travel reporting tool, username and password. That typically is the most common, as well as GSA employees can use the GSA SSO login. So let's review each of these briefly, and then I'll focus particularly on the travel reporting tool username and password, since this will require what's known as a two-factor authentication process upon each entry. Okay, so the first one we saw was OMB Max. This is a central account provided by the federal government that is utilized by multiple platforms to make it easier for you to not have to remember so many different usernames and passwords. If you do not have an OMB Max account and credentials, you can go ahead and utilize the link here. There is also a link within the user guide as well to follow in order to go ahead and register. If you use your travel reporting tool username and password, again, this will typically be the email address, the account that was provided to you by the system, and then the password that you set. In the case that you forget your password, there is a forgotten password function on the login page, or you also can contact the help desk for them to go ahead and reset your password. Now lastly, again, for GSA employees only, you can use your GSA single sign-on. I want to focus in on that travel reporting tool username and password and the two-factor authentication process. Again, as a reminder, this is going to happen upon each login to the platform and is a GSA Salesforce requirement. In case you're not familiar, Salesforce will be the underlying technology that is driving the travel reporting tool. So here we see on the login page the area in which you would enter in your travel reporting tool username and password. Once you do that and click username login, you'll then be brought to a screen that will ask you for a code. Now at this point, you would have been emailed this code in order to enter in here in this field. So please check your email, obtain what I believe is that 5-digit code, and enter that here within the field, and then go ahead and click the next button. Now if you tend to copy and paste the information, just be careful not to capture any spaces, as it should only be the numbers that are provided to you. Once you do click the next button and are successful, you'll be then brought to the Travel Home tab that we see pictured here. Now at this point, I won't go ahead and review this because I want to use the our training sandbox, to go ahead and provide the overview of the training home tab here, as well as how to update your information and go ahead and complete the process for the fiscal year. So before we get into the system, what I want to do is go ahead and help you navigate the system. So I'll give you some pointers on how to get around in case you're not familiar and haven't used some of the other travel reporting tool applications. We'll then review how to enter relocation data for both, again, the final and the obligated types. We'll then go ahead and look at completing the relocation data entry process when there is information to report. And then we'll review how to go ahead and indicate in the system that your agency has no data to enter for a particular fiscal year. And then we'll go ahead and take a look at the reports. So once information is input in the system and complete, you'll be able to go ahead and see that information through the reports function, as well as be able to compare yourself against other agencies through the reporting function. So we'll review that as a part of today's demonstration. So give me a moment to go ahead and come over to the application. And I'm first going to show you the production live login page. So this is similar to what we saw on the slide. Okay, again, this is going to be travel.reporting.gov, and again, where you can obtain the user guide as well as training on the other applications involved and where this recording should have been posted as you have obtained and are listening to it now, and then your login area that we reviewed. Now for this training purpose, I will be logged into what's known as a training sandbox as a travel relocation user. Okay, this will be basically that a user to which I've been assigned that travel relocation data entry role that we reviewed earlier. And you'll see some sample information here, as again, this is a sandbox, as reminded up here on the top right. Once you enter into the production environment, you should see most everything similar to what I'm showing, with the exception that some of the listeners may actually have access to some of the other tools, as you may be responsible for reporting information for those types, such as, again, premium class, senior federal, or the travel reporting information profile. For this recording and training purpose, we're going to be focusing on the relocation reporting profile. Now first, let me start here at the top. For those who are not familiar with the system, these navigational elements are typically referred to here in the system as tabs. And that's mainly because, as you can see, the tab icon or image behind the words travel home, similar to what we might see on a physical folder tab. As I click over, a tab will appear behind each, so we know on which tab we have landed and what we're viewing. And just to review these briefly, okay, you can see the travel home tab is where we are now. In the case that you ever feel lost in the system, please feel free to use the travel home tab. I advise against using the back buttons of your browser just to make sure that you can always return to the proper place. Now the chatter tool is a collaboration tool here within the platform that is meant to help you and other individuals utilizing the system to go ahead and communicate with one another around the use of the platform. It's only available to the users here on the platform, and it's similar to social media functionality. So those of you who might be familiar with using Facebook, it's very similar in terms of being able to create posts and share with others who are on the platform and allowing the others to be notified through email that posts have been shared and for them to reply back to you either through that email or within the platform itself. There is more information in the user guide about chatter in case you're interested. However, this will not be part of today's demonstration. Now the data entry tab will be the main area where we focus on during this training. This is going to be where you enter in your information and then also complete your process to ensure that you remain compliant. And reports will be where we go once information, again, is in the system, where we can confirm through reports available to us for relocation, as well as reports that help compare us against other agencies. Now on the left-hand side, these are more informational elements. Okay, so the top here are navigational elements allowing us to access different areas of the system. On the left-hand side here, more informational elements. Now the first one here, the user access that I'm highlighting, reminds us of the user roles that are assigned to the account that we have on the system. As I mentioned earlier, here you can see the travel relocation user role is assigned to my account. In the case that you're using other applications like PCTR or SFTR, you'll see the multiple roles listed and assigned to your account. Now, I see the Manage Pending Approvals here. However, with relocation, please take note that there is no approval process necessary. So once your information is entered into the system and you click Complete, and you'll see that your status is updated on the system, and there is no additional approval steps necessary. While we're within the system, like on the home page, we have the Contact Us area here, and this again lists all of the appropriate and corresponding help desk emails in case you encounter any issues with your use of the system. On the production environment, the program managers might utilize the upcoming events and milestones area to go ahead and post information about upcoming sessions, such as office hours or trainings like we've held in the past. All right, and then the travel training will be an additional area here on production again where you can find a link to recordings, and then the travel document library is where you can find the user guide as well as some policy-related regulation information. So that is, in essence, I think the necessary orientation for the home page. The only other aspect that you see here that we haven't covered is the search area. For relocation, I think you'll find that it's not necessary to use the search location, as it's going to be a very simple process to go ahead and enter the data entry area, and we'll see our agency listed and be able to easily access the final and obligated information for any of the fiscal years beyond this one in particular as we progress through each fiscal year. Okay, but if you're curious about the search area, there is more information within the Travel Reporting Tool User Guide. I'm now going to go ahead and put on then my data entry hat and come over to the data entry tab. Now you don't need to pay any attention to the left-hand side here, so I'm going to start with the application area here. Now, in my view, I only see the relocation application. Again, that is because, as we saw earlier, I have the relocation data entry user role assigned to my account and no other role. If you are responsible for entering in other types of travel information, you may see other applications listed here horizontally and in alphabetical order. If that is the case, you want to make sure that when you're entering in the relocation information that you choose the relocation option here by clicking what's known as the radio box. You'll see the screen briefly refresh, and then you should see the information as we're seeing here now. It also will be important that you go ahead and ensure that you are on the correct fiscal year for which you'd like to report. So here we see 2017, which is the year on which I'd like to report. Okay, so I'll show you in a moment that the both final and obligated are rolled up into the fiscal year 2017, even though our final is from 2015, just to keep it easier for you. On the production environment, it might be the case that 2018 is listed since that is the current fiscal year, and that reporting period would be opened and able to be, information would be able to be entered. So you want to ensure that when you're reporting on 2017 that you choose 2017. Once again, your screen will refresh automatically, and you should then be able to go ahead and start accessing your agency, as we see down here. And we expand to go ahead and view the relocation final and relocation obligated areas. Now the expand all and collapse all are pretty self-evident. They will help us to go ahead and expand and collapse this area. But as you can see, and as I noted earlier, we are expecting, or GSA is expecting, that all information will be aggregated for each agency, and all of the information is only reported at the top level for each agency. So there shouldn't be a long hierarchy like there might be with other travel reporting tool applications. That's why we see the Department of Agriculture and then the relocation final 2015 and relocation obligated 2017. So this is what I'm required to report on for the previous fiscal year. Now, a helpful area to remember in the system is this area. A lot of this information here that I'm highlighting is being covered by what I'm reviewing in the training, but also the red text here is reminding us of what is missing from the system and is a status indicator for us or for me and my team members as I'm entering information. As you can see, it lets me know that I'm missing final for 2015 and obligated for 2017. Another status indicator will be the ones here listed on the right. So we see a series of icons here. I'll start from the bottom right, looking at our relocation obligated 2017. This first icon here is what's known as the data entry icon. And in particular, this is associated with obligated 2017. So when I'm ready to begin entering information for obligated 2017, I would click that icon and would access the data entry form. We'll go ahead and do that shortly. Similarly, if I look right above is the 2015 final data entry icon. This will allow me to access that form and enter the information for final 2015. Now, once we go into these areas, you'll see that this is where we also complete the data entry process. Once we've done that, this reporting period icon, as we refer to this graph type icon, will go ahead and turn green. That will be another status indicator that your agency is complete for one or both of the final and obligated reporting types. Now, once both of the final and obligated information has been entered and completed, then the house icon at the very top agency level will turn green as well. This will be helpful for you if there are multiple team members working together to go ahead and complete the process. But also, this is very helpful and a status indicator for the GSA program managers who do have access to view all of the agency's reporting information. So that is the orientation to the data entry page, and what we typically call this as the tree structure. Okay, but very simple from the relocation standpoint. I now want to go ahead and begin to show you how to go ahead and enter in information. I'm going to start with the final 2015. Now again, it's assumed that you would have collected this information and compiled the information within the entire agency and aggregated it at the very top level to begin to enter into this form. Now as I scroll over some of the fields that we see here, you can see that the fields become highlighted. So this is a way for me to go ahead and individually update a field. And I can go ahead and double click that field, enter in a value. Okay, when I click enter, you can see that the text is red. So that means that it's entered but not yet saved. And when I go ahead and want to go and finalize that, I click the save icon, the save button. Okay, so I left that field intentionally blank just so you could see, and I filled out a number of others just to save some time on the recording so you wouldn't have to watch me enter in all the numbers. Okay, but I'll go ahead and come over to the cost side and show you the same process. I double click on the field and I can go ahead and enter in a value. If I click enter on my keyboard, you can see the number is entered and in red text, meaning it's entered but not saved. The little icon here would be to undo in the case that I want to remove that. But again, I can save the value and make sure that it's entered. And it'll turn black once the value has been saved. So this means that it's now entered into the system and saved. And again, if multiple individuals from an agency are working to enter in information, once it's saved, then the other individuals can then view that information by accessing the data entry form in the same manner. Now, that's how we go ahead and update individual fields. When I want to go ahead and perhaps complete the form all at once, I can use the Edit button here on the data entry form, and this brings me to a typical web form view. You can see that the values that I've entered here have all been saved and input, but I can modify them up into the reporting period deadline, which again is November 30th. Now, here again is an example of information that I need to report, but it could be the instance that you don't have any information at all for a particular field. So in that case, I could go ahead and enter zeros, but I cannot leave that field blank in order to go ahead and complete the process. All right, so if there isn't any information for a particular field, please enter 0 as your value. Now, in a separate communication, I believe all users were provided with information on the types of information that is being sought, and that is represented here by the fields we see for the employee numbers, the number of employees related to each request, as well as the total cost. And as I'm highlighting, you might see that the question mark icon is being highlighted. And this is a helpful contextual information icon that allows you to see a description of the field and a reminder of the type of information that is being sought. Okay, so there's one for each field that you can go ahead and review. Now, pretending that I'm confident that all of my information is entered, complete, I can then go ahead and click the Save button. Before I do that, one thing to note is the reporting period ID. That is something that is generated by the system, and that is something that you don't get to change or don't necessarily need to change. So you can go ahead and pretty much ignore that button, but just so you understand, it's a unique identifier for this particular type of information, which is our obligated 2015 related to my agency, which was Department of Agriculture here in our training example. Okay, there'll be a separate reporting period ID for our final 2015, as we'll see shortly. So I would save that information, again, to make sure it's entered into the system. And once I, again, am confident that all the information is input and I'm ready to consider my entry complete, all I need to do is go ahead and click the Complete button. So the system goes ahead, processes that request and that completion, and a couple of things happen. As you can see, I'm taken back to the data entry page, and my notice for the final 2015 missing is no longer there. As well, if I expand my agency, I can now see the reporting period icon for final 2015 is green. Okay. For those who are familiar with other reporting tools like SFTR or PCTR, there's no need to come into the reporting period itself. For relocation, this is mainly a status indicator. Okay, if I want to go back and see the information, I could go ahead, re-enter that data form, and see the information. And again, even though we've clicked the Complete button, perhaps you noticed or missed a value, you can always come back in and edit up into November 30th. Again, if you feel like after November 30th an update is necessary, then you need to go ahead and email the help desk at help.relocation@gsa.gov. So hopefully you see that as a very simple process. We will now talk about how to go ahead and indicate that your agency might have no data to report. So we're going to pretend that for our obligated 2017 that we have no data to report. So it's a very simple process. I come into that particular data entry form. I want to make sure that none of the fields have any information. Okay, for this process, you don't need to put zeros in the fields. You want to make sure that everything is blank, and then simply click the No Data to Enter button. Like we saw before, we'll come to a splash page and be returned then back to the Data Entry tab. As a reminder, if you do work with multiple applications, to come back to the relocation, make sure you choose relocation and the proper fiscal year. Now, you can see that a couple of things. Again, the remaining message indicating that I had missing obligated 2017 information is now gone. So I'm considered complete for both final and obligated. And we can see that both reporting period icons are green, and now my agency house icon is green as well. Okay, and again, this is going to be very important as the program managers at GSA are looking at all agencies in their view and can monitor the status as we progress closer to the deadline. So we ask that you please go ahead and enter all of your information and click the complete button, or again, indicate for a particular information type that you have no data to report. So that, in essence, is how you go ahead and update your agency, in particular how you enter in your relocation information for both the final and obligated information types. And once you do that, then your agency is considered complete. There is no extra approval process necessary. So now let's go ahead and turn to look at the reports. So again, reports are important that once information is entered in the system, you can query that information if you'd like. Okay, reports are not a necessary or required component. It's just a function that allows you to see information in a compiled way once it's entered into the platform. So when I come into the reports area, you'll see again the tab indicates I'm on the reports tab. I'm coming to what's known as the reports and dashboard area. On the left-hand side here, I see a number of folders. In your view, you're going to go, you see the My Personal Custom Reports, you'll see My Personal Dashboards. These are more useful when you begin and work more deeply with reports. But for today's purpose, we're going to show you how to locate some of the standard reports that have been created for you already on the system. Now, when you look in production, your relocation reports will most likely be here at the bottom. What I did was pin it to the top by rolling over the reports folder, and you can see the push pin icon here, and that allows me to go ahead and pin to the top. Once I click that folder, I'm then shown a list of all of the reports that I have access to. So here, for the relocation, you can see there are 14 different reports. Now, because there are two different types of information that we need to input, you can see there are 4 reports that we can look at for the final numbers that we put in, as well as 4 reports for the obligated. And then there's also, when we see the percentage of GovWide total, that's the report that shows us against all of the other agencies that are reporting information. Now this is going to be more useful after the reporting period deadline of November 30th, after everyone has submitted their information. You'll also see that there's a detailed report that will show all of the information that we've input. And I'm going to show that one to you as we review how we can go ahead and run the report. So when we click on the report, okay, in essence, we're running the report and brought to the report page. So the report then is showing me all of the fields, and this is related to the total employee number and total cost for each field that we've entered. Okay, and you can see that these are the values that I've entered here. Now, one way for you to ensure that you're looking at the right information is take a look at your time frame. Okay? There's a variety of ways that you can go ahead and filter your view based on the information that you'd like to see. So you would just go ahead and make sure and take a look at your time frame and choose the right fiscal information. All right. Now, if you'd like to go ahead and take this information offline, we recommend that you use the printable view. Now, you most likely have this information perhaps already in a spreadsheet compiled and totaled, but again, perhaps you want to go ahead and have some sort of record that has been entered into the system. So again, the printable view is an option here that's going to immediately download an Excel file and also keep the format of the report as we see it here. So if I open the Excel document to show you, give that a moment to open. Okay, you can see that it notes the type of report that I've run, which was the relocation detailed, who it was generated by and when, the filters that have been applied, and these have been set up already in the report for you, and I didn't change any in my demonstration, as well as the information that has been downloaded. And because we're working with the training sandbox, it's most likely that you'll only have one entry here with the information that you've provided. We're seeing multiple entries here because the time frame that's set is actually for all reporting periods, and for testing purposes, we've put in multiple reporting periods of information. So now this is an Excel file that's on my computer. I could go ahead and manipulate this further if I need to, or save it to a location for myself, or to share with my team if I need to. Now let's just take a look at one more report in a relocation area. So we'll always want to make sure we click on that relocation reports folder. I'll just take a quick look at the, again, percentage of gov-wide total. Let's do the HHG shipment. Again, don't mind the errors here, but take a look at the percentage, and you can see our agency is listed here. You won't see any other agencies. What you're going to be able to see is your percentage against, again, how other people are reporting their information. So I'm seeing 100% because on this training sandbox, I'm the only agency that has reported information. Okay, as others do enter, you'll be able to see that. Okay, the same thing here. If you would like an offline copy, use your printable view in order to go ahead and download that Excel file and obtain the results. Your export details will also give you an Excel file. However, it won't maintain any of the integrity of the report as we see it here, okay, such as how the columns are organized and colored and filled in. So that completes the demonstration of, again, how we go ahead and enter in our relocation information, how we complete the process, whether we have information or not to report, and then, again, not required, but how we can go ahead and view information and take that offline for our own purpose. I'm going to return to the presentation so we can close and, again, remind you of how to go ahead and contact support, as well as the resources that are available for you. So we've talked about this a couple of times, but again, if you do have issues related to utilizing the platform, please go ahead and email help.relocation@gsa.gov. Now, in the beginning, you're welcome to go ahead and email the help desk in case you have a question about how to use the platform, but we do recommend that you obtain the user guide first and take a look and make sure that you try to work through and obtain the information there first. But if you feel stuck, please feel free to go ahead and email the help desk. So we've talked about the travel user guide, again, being available on the login page of the travel reporting tool at travelreporting.gov, travel.reporting.gov. And for those who might have viewed or attended other travel training, such as that for premium class and trip, you would want to go ahead and make sure that you have the latest version of the user guide, which is version 3, which has been updated to include the relocation information. Okay, we've also been able to provide the presentation to all the users for relocation, and again, we've just reviewed the help desk information. So as I'm recording this session, I will let you know that the recording will be available soon, but if you are viewing this, that means it already is available. So thank you very much for your time and attention during this training session, and I wish you the best with all of your relocation and other travel reporting.